Welcome to another episode of China Update, where I provide you with the most up-to-date political, economic and geostrategic analysis on the world's number 2 economy. My name is Tony. Let's jump in. Happy Wednesday, everybody. In a sign of just how concerned Beijing has become on this issue, on Monday of this week, the supreme decision-making body of the country, the party's Politburo, held a study session on the theme of employment. A year after telling young people in China struggling to get a job that they should endure hardship, General Secretary Xi Jinping has changed his messaging and priority. The General Secretary ordered China's cadres to put employment and job creation, quote, at the forefront of their mind, end quote, as Beijing tries to anchor market confidence and maintain stability in the run-up to July's important third plenum. With youth unemployment still running at nearly 3 times the overall rate, Xi expressed, quote, we must develop new business entities and new business models vigorously, actively cultivating new professions and developing new sources of job creation, end quote, adding that leaders needed to, quote, encourage young people to engage in employment and entrepreneurship in key areas, key industries and urban and rural grassroots and small and medium-sized enterprises, end quote. One commentator frankly expressed that Beijing appears to be in a panic mode over employment. Fu Weigang, with the Shanghai Institute of Finance and Law, said the timing of Xi's address, quote, conveys a message of urgency ahead of university graduations, end quote. A record 12 million graduates are set to enter China's workforce this year. China's unemployment rate for those aged 16 to 24 was running at above 21% in June last year, over 20 million people, when the National Bureau of Statistics suddenly stopped reporting the figures. The government started releasing figures for youth unemployment again in December under a different methodology. Under the new methodology, the figure was 14.7% in April, down from 15.3% a month earlier, but still much higher than the urban unemployment rate, officially at 5%. As we have explored in previous videos, youth unemployment has become a source of anxiety for policymakers, concerned over the political fallout from such a demographic being idle and disenchanted. Authorities have been under pressure to create enough jobs, particularly as even more college graduates chase a shrinking pool of white-collar jobs in a weak economy after zero COVID and the housing crisis. The study session was also concerned with employment of migrant workers, with millions in the construction sector now out of work due to the prolonged housing crisis. Xi Jinping concluded his comments by expressing, quote, employment is the most basic livelihood of the people, and it is related to the healthy development of the economy and society, and the long-term stability of the country, end quote. Next up, today, Wednesday, the International Monetary Fund raised its forecast for China's growth this year to 5%, from 4.6% previously, due to strong first quarter figures and recent policy measures. The organization now expects China's economy to grow by 4.5% in 2025, up from the previous forecast of 4.1%. But by 2029, they anticipate China's growth will decelerate to 3.3% due to an aging population and slower productivity growth. That's down from the prior forecast of 3.5% growth in the medium term. Of course, these forecasts assume no black swan events, like further breakdown of the international order, conflict, an economic crisis, or greater US-China competition, any of which is very possible. In the report, the IMF also reiterated calls to restructure the Chinese economy away from inefficient industrial policies supporting priority sectors and towards those that favor domestic consumption. Given that the private sector is responsible for 80% of urban employment, after Monday's study session, leadership may be wise to follow some of this advice. But, as we have explored in yesterday's video and previous videos, Beijing is currently very much wedded to strong industrial policy. And of course, these IMF comments come amid a growing concern among China's trading partners that its industrial policies are creating overcapacity in sectors such as vehicles and renewable energy, with the report expressing, quote, key priorities include rebalancing the economy towards consumption and strengthening the social net and liberalizing the services sector to enable it to boost growth potential and create jobs. China's use of industrial policies to support priority sectors can lead to a misallocation of domestic resources and potentially affect trading partners. Scaling back such policies and removing trade and investment restrictions would raise domestic productivity and ease fragmentation pressures. End quote. Next up, several Middle Eastern leaders are in Beijing this week, but first, if you're getting some value from today's episode, it's a huge help if you can hit the like button. Sharing and subscribing is also a big help. It's the only way in which the channel can grow, and Patreon and Buy Me a Coffee links are also in the description for those who want to help keep the channel financially sustainable. The channel relies primarily on your support to keep going. Thank you so much, everybody, for the ongoing support. The Egyptian president, Bahrain's king, Tunisia's president, and the United Arab Emirates president will pay state visits to China from Tuesday through Saturday this week, with these leaders and Xi Jinping himself attending the opening ceremony of the 10th Ministerial Conference on the China Arab States Cooperation Forum that will be convened on Thursday in Beijing. State media reports that China and the Arab nations are expected to issue a joint call for bringing an end to the Gaza conflict as soon as possible and urging the international community to implement the two-state solution. On Monday, PRC Vice Foreign Minister Deng Li said that the conflict in the Gaza Strip has killed or wounded more than 100,000 civilians and that the Chinese and Arab foreign ministers will have an in-depth discussion on the Palestinian issue. Quote, "As a responsible major country, China believes that it is necessary for us to do our part in promoting peace in the Middle East and to shoulder our responsibilities in alleviating the humanitarian crisis. At this moment, the international community should act with fairness and justice for peace in the Middle East." End quote. State media has stepped up coverage of Arab-Chinese cooperation too. One state-run Xinhua article writes today, for example, quote, "The famous tale of Aladdin in Arabian Nights was actually set in China, whose remoteness from Arab lands lends an exotic allure to the narrative. Fast forward to the 21st century, the once mythical China has stepped out of Arabian Nights and into the everyday life of millions of Arabs." End quote. The piece then quickly moved to politics, however. Quote, "After the latest Israeli-Palestinian conflict erupted last October, China has been calling for a ceasefire, speeding up humanitarian aid, and a lasting, just solution to the Palestinian question. The Arab nations have always held the One China principle and backed China's efforts to safeguard its territorial integrity." End quote. If there are any major developments from the forum, we will cover it later this week. And finally for today, in a sign that Hong Kong's speech environment is fast becoming just like the mainland's, police have made their first arrests under Hong Kong's new domestic national security legislation by detaining 6 people for allegedly publishing seditious materials linked to the 1989 Tiananmen Square crackdown, quote, "with the aim of inciting hatred of the local and central governments." End quote. Hong Kong-based South China Morning Post reports that the force's National Security Department said a woman, with the help of 5 others, was alleged to have used a social media platform from April to, quote, "take advantage of a coming sensitive date," end quote, and was, quote, "continuously publishing posts to incite hatred of the central authorities, the city government and the judiciary," end quote, adding, quote, "I would like to reiterate that the crime is not about the subject. They are utilizing the subject and during which they have incited hatred against the central government. This incitement of hatred is the cause of the crime." End quote. The Facebook page in question included personal reflections ahead of the 35th anniversary of the Tiananmen crackdown and asked for others to share their thoughts. The most popular post, which garnered more than 1,000 reactions, was her thoughts on noodles served at a restaurant she used to visit before the annual June 4th vigil in nearby Victoria Park. The National Security Department did not detail how the comments constituted sedition. The arrests were the first since the Safeguarding National Security Ordinance was enacted on the 23rd of March of this year. The tightening crackdown on speech is likely to have a cooling effect, not just in civilian life, but in the business world too. Let's end today's episode with a passage from a US-based New York Times article published this week. Quote, "For the law firm Mayer Brown, the political risks in Hong Kong became clear in 2022 after it withdrew itself from a case representing the University of Hong Kong in its attempt to remove a statue commemorating the 1989 Tiananmen massacre from campus. The fallout was immediate. One by one, Chinese clients of Mayer Brown removed it from their lists of go-to firms for legal work. This month, the law firm announced a plan to decouple from its Hong Kong partnership, ending what just a few months earlier had been heralded as a 160-year Hong Kong story." End quote. Okay, that is today's episode of China Update. Thank you so much, everybody, for watching. Have a good Wednesday, and I will see you all tomorrow.